Good day, everyone. I am pleased to be with you all. My name is Engelbrecht, and I'll be sharing some exciting new data from the southeast coast of Southern Africa. We will be looking at submerged paleo shorelines and how these, along with deltas, rivers, and dunes, reveal the effects of meltwater pulses on the shelf. Our focus is on the east coast of Southern Africa, specifically where a broad and gentle continental shelf is observed offshore the largest river debouchement to the coast, known as the Tugela River. A departure from the otherwise narrow and steep continental shelf, both to the north and to the south of the study. This portion of shelf is known as the Tugela Shelf. Here we have the full scope of collected data. To break it down, there are seismic data, with bold lines referring to subsequent figures in this presentation, multi-beam bathymetric data, as well as a series of cores. Let's take a closer look at each of these. First up, let's define the seismic stratigraphy of the study area. Here, we have a coast perpendicular topaz seismic profile from broadly 20 meter to 100 meter depth. Unit 1, shown in light gray, defines the lowermost and oldest resolvable seismic unit for the study and marks the acoustic basement. This unit is described by other authors as comprising Cretaceous age siltstones. The uppermost portions of this unit have been subject to subaerial exposure, creating a surface of erosion interpreted to represent the sequence boundary. Unit 2, shown in different shades of brown, both here and here. These are observed in seismic section as high relief pinnacles with a washed out seismic expression and are widely associated with the eolinite shorelines. These, like those observed globally in other studies, occur at rather specific depths, centered closely around the 60 meter and 100 meter marks. These form during an extended period of sea level quiescence at 60 meter and 100 meter depths and directly precede major ice sheet collapse events known as meltwater pulses, with rapid overstepping of the shoreline form preserving them in situ, moderating the effects of erosion associated with landward translation of the wave base during transgression. Filling the deep and wide depressions that once marked major fluvial pathways to the previous lowered former coastline positions, Unit 3 is defined as insize valley fill material, as sea levels transgress these incisions. Unit 4 is observed as a thin, laterally extensive across and along shelf veneer of sediment, moderating the highly irregular underlying surface. This is in line with similar transgressive deposits observed elsewhere and is denoted here as a transgressive marine sand sheet, shown in yellow. Overlying the marine transgressive sand sheet is a thick accumulation of sediment landwards of the two major shoreline features. This sediment accumulated in a zone of preferential accommodation space fostered by the antecedent geological framework of the shelf. The steepening of the shelf and the natural barrier created by the former shoreline forms resulted in the local depression and zone of sediment damming. The antecedent geologically controlled sediment masses underlain by a transgressive sand sheet are described here as delta deposits. These occurred at specific depths on the shelf, with each delta position defined by two consecutive phases of delta construction, namely a lower and an upper delta phase, with lower and upper describing stratigraphic position rather than depth on the shelf. The lower and upper delta phases are expressed here as Unit 5, shown in dark yellow, and Unit 6, shown here in a shade of green. These are large sandy accumulations of sediment. These delta deposits were preserved in situ by rapid drowning of the delta, by periods of rapid sea level rise, associated with these aforementioned meltwater pulses. Then we have Unit 7, shown in dark grey, the youngest and stratigraphically uppermost unit, and these drape the underlying units, primarily in the saddles created by elevated seafloor features such as the delta form. Unit 7 represents the contemporary Tugela River prodelta, comprising mud and silt. Next, we take a quick look at some core data. These mark the location of the cores collected, with the red markers being those shown in the diagrams to come. 3 core localities coincide with this seismic profile, namely core 24, 22, and 21, and these coincide with sediment logs core 24, 22, and 21. But for the sake of time, we will skip these and look at the most all-encompassing sediment log. Core 23 intersects 3 different seismic units. From the base upwards, it intersects Unit 5. This is defined by medium sand separated by gravelly shell layers. This transitions into a fining upward succession from coarse sand to medium sand to very fine sand, all denoting the upper delta deposit, known as Unit 6. Shell fragments are interspersed within the coarsest material. Capping the sediment log is an approximately 75 centimeter thick clay and silt associated with Unit 7. Lastly, let's take a look at multibeam bathymetric data. These are observed as 2 plan view images of the seafloor. These are appropriately named the northern and southern block. Here they are zoomed in, where I'll now draw your attention to some major morphological features. Firstly, the most prominent features are the former shorelines associated with 100-meter and 60-meter shorelines. These are observed as elongate shore parallel barriers, which are identical to Unit 2 in seismic section. Next, we observe a series of relict parabolic dunes. In keeping with dunes, the northern block shown to the left reveals an extensive dune field, which is more clearly seen in the next slide. Then, in the southern block to the right, we see a cuspate feature separating semicircular depressions on either side. These are formed when a barrier progrades in a specific region and basically segments a lagoon, leaving an adjacent semicircular depression. At the deepest portions of each bathymetric block, we observe a series of landslide scarps associated with mass wasting at the shelf break, where steeper gradients are more prone to mass wasting. Here, we see a color image of the northern block, where the coast parallel northward migrating dune field with coast perpendicular crests is more clearly seen. Note too the landslide scarps in the deepest blue regions of the shelf. This image reveals the depth zones where the thickest accumulations of aeolianite occur. The elevated paleo shorelines, shown on the left, coincide with the thickest accumulations of aeolianite, shown in orange to red on the right, occurring as linear, elongate coast parallel features. Note too the absence of data shown in white blocks, revealing an absence of aeolianite in these regions. Here, that zone of aeolianite absence marks the thickest accumulation of post-wave ravine sediment. As the wave base translates landward during transgression, the sediment that accumulates thereafter is defined as post-wave ravine surface sediment, the thickest of which coincides with the dune field located directly seaward of the major 60-meter shoreline. This points to further antecedent conditioning of the sediment partitioning on the shelf. The last set of images takes a closer look at the southern bathymetric block. The deepest portions of the seafloor, depicted in darker green, reveal major landslide scarps once again. The northernmost parts of this block reveal an elevated portion of relict parabolic dunes. Like we did with the northern block, here is an image depicting the thickest accumulation of aeolianite, and yet again, these coincide with major paleo shorelines and parabolic dunes. Finally, we see in the southern block the largely scarce accumulation of post-wave ravine sediment, restricted only to the low-lying depressions between elevated portions of the relic parabolic dunes. I thank you so much for your time and welcome any further questions. Thank you.